Hi, everyone. I hope you guys are staying safe and also trying to, at the same time, understand what this means for us as product managers, especially the times that we're living in. What are the temporary and permanent changes that are going to happen to our lives? And as a result, on businesses going forward? I thought this is a good opportunity for us to sort of sit and talk about that. So yeah, let me begin with that. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay, so the topic is consumer behavior post COVID-19, as everyone is aware here. So let's quickly take a step back to understand what's really happening, right? Why is there so much of fuss about COVID-19 and its impact on economies and world population and so on and so forth? The quick numbers say that, of course, there have been about 187,000 deaths worldwide, with a 2.6 million plus cases of COVID-19 so far that are reported so far. There are projections on how much is this going to cost the world, and the first week of April report says that this is going to be around $5 trillion. And a point to note here is that this number is increasing at a very, very rapid speed. This projection was at $2.9 trillion at the start of March. In just 1 month, it is sort of bumped up to $5 trillion. IMF says that there's going to be a minus 3% growth in global economy, in global GDP, which is a huge concern. There are projections which say that there's going to be a loss of about 25 million jobs worldwide. This is expected to be the greatest recession or the greatest lockdown, as we're calling it, after 1929. So much so that immigration laws, foreign investment laws are being changed overnight, which is actually a huge deal and tells us the intensity of the problem or the space that we are in right now, because those laws do not come at easy changes, with easy changes. Okay. So let's look at the news, what's happening in the news, right? And what are the buzzwords around the so-called coronavirus pandemic? The buzzwords are, of course, lockdown. Most of the world population is experiencing a lockdown as we speak. Why? Because of a novel coronavirus, because it leads to deaths. There's a huge debate about whether we should open the economies or not. Most are leaning towards don't open it right now, but there's some economies where the shutdown of the economy itself is causing a lot of issues. So they're talking about reopening them again. Of course, as we talked about in the previous slide, there are a lot of layoffs that are sort of happening across the board. And the next one is actually pretty interesting, which is social distancing. And this is not only for the time being. What we are suspecting is that social distancing is going to be a measure that's going to stay as a permanent damage, so to say, because after this ends, and I hope this ends soon, there is going to be that fear factor among the population that just being near someone can cause you to grab a virus that can eventually lead to death, right? So this is a huge thing that we are looking at, and social distancing in itself is going to sort of lead to a lot of business process changes. The way, for example, the way shared economy works today. How will Airbnbs function in the future? How will Uber share function in the future? How will public transport adapt to social distancing and so on and so forth? So we have to look at, of course, the answer is going to be different for every industry, but we have to look at every business from a social distancing lens to be able to be successful and to be able to adapt to what's going on. right? Of course, vaccine is another buzzword that's coming in. COVID-19 is another word for coronavirus. Recession, as we discussed in the previous slide as well, recession is again one more very, very, very important topic that's buzzing up because, as per the IMF, uh, this is going to cause a recession that has never been seen in our lifetimes. And the best, examples that we can draw from or parallels that we can draw from is the recession of depression, rather, of 1929. Uh, China is another important buzzword that's coming up in the news, more prominently because it's believed that the novel coronavirus, actually started in China and in the Wuhan area, and there are quite a few conspiracy theories rotating around how the virus got out. Why did China keep quiet on the start of the pandemic, and what's happening right now within China? And it's kind of causing global tensions with a lot of countries, and it would be really interesting to watch for because if the trade balance between China and the other countries is impacted, um, the world could look very different from what we know it. As of today, the world's majority manufacturing happens in China, and China is a huge exporter of those manufactured goods. If something were to sort of cause a loss of balance there, uh, the world could be a very different picture, as I said. So that's very important. That's a very important buzzword to watch out for. The next one is a warlike situation, which is actually kind of true because the situation that we are in right now, we are war causes two things, right? War causes a lot of expenditure, and a war causes a lot of deaths. And both of those things we are seeing right now, and we're seeing a sudden interruption in our daily lives, which is exactly what a war like situation is. So, and this also goes back to the whole Cold War with China and where would that lead us as a global economy, uh, is something to watch out for. Of course, we're all home locked, and some people are home alone as well. So that causes problems at a different level altogether, which is some people must be going through depression. Some people are feeling, a lack of sense of purpose in life, and so on and so forth. So it's basically our duty to support people emotionally during this time, and that's another important theme that's emerging out of what's happening in the world right now. So let's look at what industries have been hit, right? And why it's important to look at that is because that will tell us the scale of what's happening, and that would also tell us the kind of impact that's happening, and what should we do, or how do we literally perceive the whole situation. Uh, so what industries are hit right now are basically everything that's not food, not grocery, and not medicine, because those three things are deemed essential for survival, and anything that's not essential is hit. What does that mean? That means travel, tourism, hospitality, automobile, restaurants, oil, manufacturing, fashion, retail, shared economy like Airbnb, Uber, and you name it. In every sector of the market is potentially hit. So why is all of this happening? Really, yes, of course, it's happening because of coronavirus being very fatal, but it's happening because of proximity to people is directly correlated with the spread of the virus, right? So if you're close to a number of people, that means the virus can spread easily, and that's the only way to contain it today. or rather work on today, because there is no vaccine in place. There are a lot of investments happening in that direction as well. But as of today, there is no vaccine. So what that means is basically the only lever we have to control the spread of the virus is by not being close to people or in a group setting. Uh, so let's imagine a hypothetical scenario when lockdown is relaxed, right? Let's say everything is fine. Lockdown is relaxed. Even the vaccine has been found. Let's say, right? It would take some time for the vaccine to be given to everybody. That's number one. And the world leaders are projecting this project to be over anywhere between after the vaccine is found, which is another 12-month journey, as per today's sort of estimates. After that, also, people are saying it's going to take about 12 to 18 months for everybody in the world to get the vaccine. But let's say the vaccine is found. Let's sort of evaluate our own behavior, right? Would you book a hotel? Would you be comfortable staying in an Airbnb? Would you book an overshare with somebody in the cab you don't know? Would you be going for dining in sort of setups? How about bars? How about concerts, events, movies? Would you host family get-togethers across generations, knowing that you may be putting someone's life at risk? I am assuming the more sane you are, your answers are going to incline towards no to all of these. Of course, with a couple of exceptions here and there. What that means in a nutshell is that our behaviors won't return to normal until foreseeable future. And if it's not going to return to normal until foreseeable future, the question that we have to ask ourselves is that are those behaviors going to be permanent in nature or not? Because you just get so used to living your life in a certain way and sort of meeting your needs in another way, except like meeting people or sharing your space with other people, that it could very well lead to permanent behavior changes. And this, like I said, this means that consumers' lifestyle has changed or will change involuntarily. People may not even realize, but they would just start preferring this way of lifestyle, probably. We don't know that yet. And the things that were safe earlier, considered safe earlier, like an Uber share, who would have thought that that could lead to somebody's life, right? They aren't safe anymore, or they're not considered safe anymore, right? In any business that requires proximity to people, or rather puts people in a place of proximity, would be deeply affected, and they need to adapt as soon as possible. So what can we do about it is another question. And of course, the answer would be very different from industry to industry and company to company and product to product. But this, for product managers, it's very important to keep this at the back of their mind right now, because the safety standards, as we used to consider pre-COVID world versus now, are going to be drastically different. Now, just being near to somebody is not considered safe anymore. And that is huge. Just think about it. That's huge, right? And the changes that it can lead to from a business operations perspective or a process perspective, or even your employee safety for that matter, right? This could be huge in the way you work at office. Let's take an example, just to sort of dwell on that fact. Let's say grocery buying, right? So you and I have not even thought about pre-COVID world. We've not even thought about whether grocery buying is safe or not, right? We just pick up the car, land into a grocery shop, buy whatever we need anytime, 2 times a day, 3 times a day, based on our needs, essentially, right? But this pandemic would certainly lead to a change in consumers' buying patterns. Would it shift online? Is it possible to shift 100% business online? I don't know. So what would customers prefer in order to sort of avoid the rush and contact with other shoppers? They may prefer appointment-based systems like we do with doctors today, like we do with any other a place where we want to avoid the rush and contact with other people. You know, you may be looking at a world where you need to book a slot for buying grocery, and it can actually work because consumers are also very, very scared of the situation that's happening right now, and they want to be safe, right? And what does this mean for storefront? The storefronts will have to change and adapt. Maybe provide an appointment-based entry into stores, because remember, consumer safety is also store's business. And if people are falling sick after going into a store because it was too rushy, that store may not be in business for a long time. So they need to worry about their consumers' health at the same time. So the third point that brings me to is, what are the current practices that will be end of life? So in the given context of grocery buying, I'm assuming walk-ins may be reduced to less than 20% or so if, let's say, appointment system works, right? Because, hey, everybody is just so used to appointment-based system now, and it's safer. Exactly like doctor's office. You would rather take an appointment and go than walk in. The walk-ins are only for urgent needs, right? So it's exactly like that. And what new practices will emerge in that area? Again, so you're treating grocery shopping as your doctor's appointment or a haircut appointment that you need to plan for. So planning for an activity that you just did it at a whim, probably, or just walked in, you were used to walking in, will be a new practice. And also, like, doctor's appointments were not there forever. This was a new stream that came in a couple of years back, right? Similarly, you could just walk into a salon earlier, but now all the good salons, you need to take appointment to get a haircut. So it's exactly like that trend, and it's going to evolve. Is it going to lead exactly in the same path that's mentioned here? Maybe, may not be, but this is just one of the projections that we're looking at. Now I want to take a minute and actually think about your sector. What sector do you belong to, and the times that we are in, and now considering that safety definitions, or the definition, the context of the word safety has changed drastically. What permanent changes would this lead to in your business, in your sector? And let me provide a few examples from what has happened in the past in terms of permanent changes, right? Did you know that income taxes were just meant to fund wars, and they were not there as a standard process that we see today? But after the wars ended and income taxes sort of provided a way for government to sort of work on infrastructure and so on and so forth, they just remained. And today we are used to a world where we just have to pay taxes, right? So this was not supposed to be permanent. This was a measure out of a war. The second thing that remained permanent was airport security. That was implemented at scale after 9/11. And prior to that, the airport security was not what we are used to today. And one event in the history, or in timeline, sort of led to that change. And we're so used to airport security these days, most of us being world travelers. So that's something to think about, right? Take a minute. I'm going to pause here. Take a minute, think about it, and please post your comment, with your findings, and I'll have Nikki help me here with your comments.
Hi, Nidhi. Okay. So So I'm looking to see if for some questions here from some of the viewers. And let's see. I have one question that was posed earlier, and it says, why do you have the hypothesis that there will be a permanent behavior change after COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Again, it goes to the uncertainty factor. None of us would have imagined if we were talking about this topic in, let's say, October last year, and we would have said that just by being close to someone, uh, this could mean death to you. People would have laughed in my face, right? And come November and December, that actually became reality for a lot of people. So it's not a factor of whether people want to behave that way or not. It's a factor of what if, right? We've already seen this happening, that by being close to people, it could mean it's like reality sinks in, right? We already knew that there are a lot of viruses, bacteria floating around us, in us, potentially lethal, potentially not lethal. But when the reality is so close to home and so close to people around you, and you've seen this happening around the world, there is a constant fear of life that would sort of lead people to lead, this permanent change, essentially. I can tell you for a fact, I've spoken to so many people about it, and I can tell you for a fact that washing your hands after you come in home from work or from like a grocery shopping trip has become permanent already. So it's a good change, yes, but none of us ever did that earlier, let's face it, right? This is one of the first permanent changes that I'm looking to see. Carrying a sanitizer all around you and using it as many times as you can, especially when you're outside, has become like a very, very normal thing for people to do. That's a permanent behavior change. We're looking at these behavior changes in the short term, but my hypothesis is that fear of life is not going to go away, and that fear of losing someone close to you is not going to go away, and that is going to lead to a lot of permanent changes from a consumer's psyche perspective.
Thank you so much for that. I have another question. Do you believe that pricing strategies can have an impact on your business now? And would you consider cutting down the product's prices?
Well, that totally depends. That's a kind of a loaded question. Is there a specific kind of product specified in this question, Nikki? Sorry, I missed that part.
No, there wasn't a specific product, but there wasn't a specific product mentioned.
Okay, got it. So it totally depends. I think morally speaking, you shouldn't do that because people are already going through a lot. But let's talk business, right? In terms of business, the answer is same. It's a demand and supply game, right? So if you think there's a lot of demand for your product in today's times, by all means, increase the price. People have done that for hand sanitizers and soaps and whatnot, right? And they're still selling. But if you think the current market sort of diminishes the demand rather, then of course it's not wise enough to increase the product price further, because that's going to create another entry barrier or buying barrier for your consumers.
Thank you. Okay, I have one more question. So how do you balance the short-term and long-term adjustments for the product development process when the long-term is a bit uncertain right now? There's we're not really sure how long this is going to be.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and everybody is grappling to find an answer to that, honestly. But I think in the short term, it's really the time of sort of finding a balance between being moral and being business oriented at the same time. How do you be moral is basically be kind, because everybody is suffering a lot. It's really a warlike situation. So do your best to be kind to people, even as a business. But on the other side, if you have to balance your business metrics and needs and so on and so forth, find the right balance between, product pricing and yet being able to add value to a consumer's life. All of these delivery services, for example, they're charging a customer these days a huge lot of money, but at the same time, they're providing convenience and safety in the comfort of people's homes. So they've found like a very right balance in that sense, and they're able to sort of survive. So that's short term, but in the long term, like I said, it goes back to going to the drawing board again and understanding what this new world means to your business and how to take this new definition of world and business and demand and supply and implement that into your equation of finding the profitable business. And this would mean going back to the board to a lot of industries that typically deal with people being in closed zones, right? So that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Do we have time for another question, or are?
Yeah, sure.
One last question. So you talked in your presentation about the changes that may happen on storefronts, but what do you think, or what are your predictions about any long-term changes for companies like Amazon or other large e-commerce sectors, since people are transitioning to consuming online and delivery services and things like that?
Yeah, great question. And I think the more services you can provide to a consumer inside the comfort of their home, the more successful you're going to be as a company. So look at Amazon, look at Zoom, all of those companies which are facilitating remote transactions is the theme right now and is going to be the theme for the foreseeable future. I have listed a couple of interesting reads here in my presentation. I will obviously send you a link as well for the whole presentation. I recommend to read these before going back and drawing a new strategy for your business for the long term, especially the first article, which is Demand Zero. This talks about the current scenario for certain business sectors, which is right now the demand is not diminished. For certain sectors, the demand is practically zero. So if you look at travel, right, there is no demand. It's dropped down to zero. And what does that mean for the recovery curve? Is it going to be a V curve? Is it going to be a U curve? This person is saying very interesting stuff, which is, no, it's not going to be a V or U. It's going to be a step ladder based recovery. And we're not going to see good recovery for the foreseeable future. And how sort of one thing leads to another and it sort of forms a dominoes effect is something really, really interesting to read in this first article. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a slow recovery. So pace yourself for that. That's very, very important.